Terrific. Welcome
Thank you.
everybody to the Enforcement Investigations and Intervention Committee. We're going to start with a quick roll call. So Patricia Wynn is here. I was appointed by Governor Newsom in a public member role, and I am the chair of the EIIC. David Lawler.
Good afternoon, David Lawler. I was appointed by Governor Newsom also in a public member role.
Thank you. Board Member Cormack.
Good afternoon. My name is Allison Cormack. I was appointed to be a member of the public on this board by the Speaker of the Assembly.
Great, welcome. BRN Executive Officer Loretta Melby.
Thank you. I am Loretta or Lori Melby. I'm the board's executive officer appointed by the board.
Thank you. Legal Counsel Reza Pejuhesh.
Good afternoon, Reza Pejuhesh with DCA Legal Affairs Division, and I'm BRN Legal Counsel.
Great. And Shannon Johnson, Enforcement Division Chief.
Let me see if we can get her elevated. Is she in the Sacramento public area? Is she joining separate? She's joining separate. Mark, can you elevate Shannon, please? There you go, Shannon. You're off mute, but I cannot hear you.
I'm here.
Oh, hear and see you. Perfect.
Shannon, thank you very much. So we're going to go ahead and open this up for public comment for items not on the agenda. So board moderator, would you please take us to public comment?
Okay, can I do my welcome script first for this meeting?
Yes, you may. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is the BRN moderator. I will be moderating the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the committee reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. I will then call on the individual and unmute their microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. I will not give a warning as your time approaches. I will mute your microphone and will announce that your time has exceeded the time allotted. I will then proceed to the next member of the public who has a comment. We will also query our in-person location in Sacramento, which I have been informed there is nobody currently there, but if that changes, we will query them. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for the members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. When your turn comes, you will be prompted to unmute. If your question can be answered, the committee will respond accordingly. When making your comment, speak about anything you believe is important for the members to know. Remember, committee members cannot address any item not on the agenda. Items not on the agenda at that moment, items that you would like to add to a future meeting, or items that will be discussed later on the agenda will be discussed at the correct times during the meeting. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when committee members or BRN staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will mute your microphone automatically. Thank you. And with that said, we will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Wynn, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in our Sacramento location. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please, and thank you very much. So we will go ahead and move to item number 3, which is a review and vote on the minutes from our January 22nd, 2025 meeting. Do any of the committee members have any changes or comments on the minutes?
I don't, no.
Nor do I, and I'm happy to make a motion if the chair would like that.
Yes, please, Committee Member
I move
Cormac.
that we accept the EIIC meeting minutes from January 22nd, 2025, and allow BRN staff to make non-substantive changes to correct name misspellings and or typos that may be discovered in the document.
I will second David Lawler.
And a second, we'll go ahead and open up the public comment on committee meeting minutes.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I have activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Nguyen, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in our location in Sacramento. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and take this to a vote. Nguyen votes aye. Committee Member Cormac,
Cormac, yes.
Committee Member Lawler.
Lawler, yes.
Those minutes are approved. So at the request of Lori, we are going to move agenda item number 9. We're going to take that out of order and take it right now. So this is regarding the use of an oral fluid or saliva testing in addition to other current members of random drug and alcohol testing for probationers or intervention program participants. Lori, would you introduce us to the Vault folks?
It's going to be Shannon, and I
Shannon
do
will.
see
Thank you,
somebody
Shannon.
from Vault in the attendees.
Hi, everybody. I do see Dr. Ferguson in the attendees, if
Yes.
he could be elevated, but Sean O'Neill, I don't see him in the attendees,
Yep.
so.
He is in the attendees
Okay.
as under the email address. So the one that says vaulthealth.com. Board moderator, if you can elevate him as well.
Thank you very much, Shannon. I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Okay, so agenda item 9.0, it was the discussion and possible action regarding the use of oral fluid testing, in addition to some other current methods of random drug testing and alcohol testing for the probationers and the intervention program participants, and related considerations, including access to in-person test sites, validity of alternative testing methods, relative cost. And we asked Vault, namely Sean O'Neill and Dr. Ferguson, if they wouldn't mind presenting this topic for you guys today. I believe they have both been elevated. So Sean, if you're there, you and Dr. Ferguson, if you want to go ahead and I don't know if you'd like to share screen slides.
No, we thought we would do it
Okay.
as a conversation.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to start with having Dr. Ferguson kick us off to talk about oral fluid testing at a high level.
Thank you.
About now, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I feel like the Verizon guy. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? It's not the 4th time I said that. Glad you finally could hear me because I finally figured it out. So anyway, first thing I want to talk about is nomenclature. And the most important thing to know, I think, when we're talking about oral fluid testing is that it's really is oral fluid testing, that it's not saliva testing. Oral fluid has a whole lot of different components. Won't go into gory detail here for you, but they come from the upper respiratory tract, the lower respiratory tract, and everything in between. That composition can vary if somebody's got allergic reaction, all sorts of things going on. So we really do call it oral fluid. And because we have variations in the composition of the fluid, we're going to see some of the same issues in oral fluid that we see in urine. There's urine concentration variations, things like that. So that is just a baseline for the recommendations that we're going to come up with after I give you the high level view of oral fluid. Just remember that there is no gold standard testing matrix. The best gold standard testing process is randomization of both dates of testing, panels of testing, and testing matrices. We like to use all the different available body matrices for testing because that's the closest we can get to a gold standard. So oral fluid has varying compositions. Drugs get deposited in various ways too. And again, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about how that happens, but it has relevance to the cutoff levels that we use in oral fluid. And that you'll notice if you do look at the panel specifics, the cutoffs have a lot of variation. And that's the reason why, because there's different ways that drugs get in there, all the way from just absorption from the oral cavity to transfer from saliva and the other oral and the other components of oral fluid that we just talked about. Because there's a lot of turnover here, the detection window in oral fluid is really short. In urine, we say it's anywhere from 72 hours to 2 weeks, depending on the substance. In oral fluid, almost any substance goes away in about 36 hours max. There might be a few exceptions to that, again, based on the composition of the oral fluid, but 24 to 36 hours is a really good baseline for oral fluid detection. And we got to take that into consideration when we decide when we're going to do the testing. Its detection window is short. Another issue is that it's probably common sense that the amount of oral fluid collected in the swabs, or even if you do a neat process, which almost nobody does anymore, thank goodness, it's very small compared to the amount of urine that's collected, the amount of blood that can be collected for PEth testing, the amount of hair that can be collected for hair tests. The amount of oral fluid is tiny. Therefore, the amount of drug in that oral fluid is also tiny. So labs have to be well versed in looking down to very, very small nanogram levels and even fractional nanogram levels of composition to find those analytes that they're looking for. Since that happens, the oral fluid collection process is really, really important. You've got to get enough specimen. Only recently have most of the oral fluid devices started letting collectors know when adequate specimens been collected. They're doing that because that was a requirement by the federal agencies, HHS and DOT, before they would approve oral fluid testing for their testing process. Both HHS and DOT have approved oral fluid testing now, but the devices are still being created, if you will. Now the devices that we're using do tell us when there's a proper amount of fluid involved. The collection is very, very different than urine. While you have shy bladders, you also have shy mouth issues, and the collectors have to be trained in taking care of that and what to do in terms of waiting periods, fluid allowance. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but the collection process with such a tiny bit of specimen becomes really, really important. Another reason the collection process is of major importance is that unlike urine, there is no validity testing in oral fluid. Different labs have put out different ideas for composition from immunoglobulins and other things that might be at some point in the future accepted for validity testing. But as we talk right now, there just isn't any. So the collection has to be done properly. So given all that, here are the recommendations that we have for oral fluid. I started off by saying that we should look at this as an alternative specimen, not the best way to do it. Mix it in with randomization of all the testing matrices and use it as an appropriate alternative. It's also a really good surprise specimen. If you got somebody you think that's messing with your urine test, you can pop an oral fluid test on them. Sometimes that really works as a good surprise for the donor. Oral fluid is best collected in person, obviously, from what I just said, but because of some of the abilities of virtual collection nowadays, it does not have to be collected in person. We like to see everything collected in person if we can. That's not the real world. That's not the world that we're living in now. Oral fluid happily can lend itself to virtual testing. Virtual collectors should be live, not recorded for viewing later. Virtual collectors need to be able to see everything is going properly and be able to stop the collection and call it out if there's a problem and things are not going properly. But it is a reasonable way to collect oral fluid testing. And one of the benefits of this type of testing is that somebody can't get over a mountain because of snow. Somebody says they can't get into the collection site for all sorts of various reasons. They have kits, then we can do a virtual oral fluid test without the requirement for travel. So all of that is a very, very high level overview. And I think I should end by saying that because of some of the issues that I brought out, we do strongly recommend that oral fluid testing be always laboratory based. We would not ever recommend oral fluid point of collection testing, and there are multiple reasons for that. All point of collection testing is only immunoassay screening. There's no way to confirm point of collection testing. Laboratories always confirm their specimens. You never hear of a result from Vault that has not been confirmed at the lab. MROs don't review results that are not confirmed at the lab. Secondly, point of collection oral fluid testing is by immunoassay only. Remember, I said the quantities are tiny, the amount of drug in the oral fluid is tiny. Bottom line, the immunoassay is just not that accurate. So you'll get a lot of false negatives and false positives sometimes from oral fluid point of collection testing, and we don't recommend it. That's my presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Sean now.
All right, thank you. So some of the things also, we wanted to discuss.
Excuse me, thank you. That was a very interesting presentation. I'm wondering if committee members have questions of Mr. Ferguson before we go back to you, Mr. Sorry, lost your name.
O'Neill.
Sorry, O'Neill.
O'Neill, thank you. Thank you. How about committee members, Lawler or Cormac?
I have two questions. Thank you for that presentation. That was actually very informative. My first thought was, if there is so little of an amount in the specimen, is there a second test or a follow-up that's not oral fluid to confirm in case there is a false negative or a false positive? And my second question related to that, you mentioned shy mouth and the fact that it's difficult to get a large enough specimen of oral fluid. Does a drug or a chemical exist that if I popped it in my mouth, it would make it water enough to get more oral fluid out of it? Can we induce more oral fluid from a person?
Sure can, and it's called lemon. As we all know, you put some lemon in your mouth, and what do? Everybody just drools all over your keyboard. So yes, there are other things that are that simple to create oral fluid. However, the best thing to do, it is part of the collection process. Again, I didn't go into a whole lot of detail about this, but there is a 10-minute deprivation period in the collection process. The best thing to do is have people drink water before that deprivation period. You don't want them drinking during the period because that'll dilute out the oral fluid. But
Right.
but a lot of studies for the feds, the feds study things tremendously before they approve them for their own testing program. And they've shown that if you drink fluid and then wait 10 minutes, that most donors are going to have enough oral fluid to take over the dry mouth. The dry mouth protocol is an hour long, actually. And that, again, without going into a whole lot of detail, during that hour, it involves actually drinking fluid and then having another deprivation period where that happens. But we also remember I said that we're using the devices, the newer devices now that tell us when the quantity of oral fluid has reached the acceptable level. And that takes into account the amount of preservative in the tube and everything else we need to know. So we know that when that blue dot lights up, and we can see it, that there's enough oral fluid there to do the testing that's involved in the panel that we're requesting that it be done. Should also say that, as you probably know, all of the testing that we do involves split specimens. That's how we check and see if the laboratory makes a mistake. A split specimen is collected at the same time, be it urine, hair, blood, and oral fluid. The split specimen isn't tested at Lab A, it's put in storage, and if the donor requests it or if the board requests it, because there's some question about whether there's accuracy or not, false negative, false positive, the second specimen can be sent to a different lab and reconfirmed for the finding of the first lab. So there has yet to be invented a really good device that actually collects specimen A and the split specimen, specimen B, at the same time. So what we do is we have to use two devices, and we can do that either concurrently or sequentially during the collecting process. But we do have an oral fluid split specimen available for testing. I did not mention one other problem. I did mention that the feds have approved oral fluid testing for their testing processes. One of the issues, though, is that there's a bunch of different oral fluid collection devices on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And when the labs get certified to do that testing, unlike urine, hair, and blood, the certification is device specific. So before we can decide on, number one, which device we're going to use, number two, which lab we're going to use, we have to be sure that there's more than one lab that's certified to test that device. We don't have all the options of available laboratories to do this specimen testing that we do with the other matrices that I mentioned. So it's a lot more complicated in finding that. We do have labs available now. Hopefully there will be more coming on board as time goes on. That difficulty in lab certification is one of the reasons the feds haven't gotten really well into the actual oral fluid testing process yet.
Thank you.
Dr. Ferguson.
Committee member Cormack, do you have any questions?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Ferguson. I think I was envisioning a swab. So when you say device, I'm wondering, do you have one you can show us? How large is the device? Just, I mean, I'm just would like to understand.
I'll tell you what, yeah, there's lots of pictures that we have now that we didn't do slides, and I don't have one sitting here in my little basement office to show you. Maybe if I did, I'm not sure how well it would come across this screen, but we can email you pictures after this presentation if that will work.
I don't know what happened with committee member Cormack. Her camera
I don't
has gone.
either, but we do need her to be on camera, and I'm sure she knows that as well. So
She
Reza,
blipped off briefly before and came right back. So I don't know if it's the same. Lori's correct. We need to have her on camera unless there is a technological issue that allow her to go forward with the camera on, which
I have a couple of questions, which maybe I'll start in, and then when she comes back on, I'll defer to her.
Tricia, if you don't mind, I had one thing, I kind of wish I had said this at the outset. Do you mind if I just briefly make this comment?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I just thought, and I apologize if I missed something when this item was introduced, but just to kind of set the context, I recall that in prior meetings, there's been public comments maybe, or just discussion about, access to testing sites. So I think the motivation for this being on the agenda today, in addition to, getting the very helpful information, the, greater detail about how this stuff works and is carried out, I think it stems back to that conversation where we talked about, or folks who themselves experience difficulties either in probation or more likely in our intervention program. They might have been very in a rural area maybe, or very distant and remote from a in-person test center. So there's consideration about whether we could mail out these oral fluid testing kits and do the remote, virtual testing like Mr. Ferguson mentioned. I think that was kind of the stimulus of this. So I only wanted to just briefly throw that out there just to remind everyone that might be listening, or those who might not have tuned in at that time, what kind of brought this about. Of course, it's, a pretty broad discussion that can take place about the use of oral fluid testing in these programs generally, but that's where this kind of derived from. Having concluded that, real quick, Allison, are you having tech issues or?
Not clear. That's not an issue I've had before, but I am currently back. So,
Okay.
You still have the floor, Allison. We were filling a little time.
great.
If you had another couple questions.
Song and
Real
dance.
quick,
Good timing
committee
too, I'm done.
format,
Yeah, I mean-
before transitioning, if I could just follow up on what Reza was saying. I don't think that it was clear why this specifically was added to the agenda. You touched on the majority of it, Reza, but there were another very specific reason that this was added is we did receive public comment at the last few committee and board meetings from probationers who have not been allowed to do oral fluid testing as of yet. And so this is being offered in the intervention program by Vault. One of our staff members at the board did look at the contract for Vault and saw that the probationers could also access this if that was something that was supported. And so we are bringing it here to the board committee and then ultimately board to really make sure that that is something that the committee and or board would like to move forward with, is adding this to the probationers, because those were the ones that were showing up in public comment saying they want what intervention has. And so we needed more information on it, more details, and that is why this was added and Vault was placed on the agenda to give that information. I know that our Chief of Enforcement, Shannon, also has information to share on pros and cons, and just to have the greater discussion here around that. So thank you, Allison, and I'll give the platform back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, that's not a tech problem I've ever seen. So, it's not a Monday, but it feels like it. My remaining question is about false negatives and false positives. Can you share with us the rates here vis-a-vis some of the other methodologies?
Well, because of the type of confirmation processes that are done, the false positive, false negative rates really are on point of collection testing, not in laboratory testing. We have the split specimen process in place to avoid that, because so when that is used, that means that two certified labs have gotten the same result from the same specimen, which rules out false, in that case, a false positive. False negatives in urine are unfortunately, I think, higher than we would like them to be, and nobody has really good numbers for that because it's so hard to study. But in the presentations that I've done in the past, the simple dilution of urine can lead to false positives. Lower the concentration of the urine, the lower the concentration of drug that's in it. If you get the concentrations down too low, then the analyte is below the cutoff. And even though it's there, it's reported as negative. That's called a false negative. So that's one of the reasons, like I said to start, there is no such thing as a gold standard which answers all of our questions. The best way to approach that is to use every matrix available to you and not just stick to only one matrix for the entire testing program.
Okay,
so-
that's helpful. I guess when I'm thinking about the use case that we're being asked to consider most often is someone who lives in a remote area and has to travel more than an hour to a testing facility.
Right.
So I guess what I'm hearing from you is in your, well, let me try this. In your professional opinion, would you suggest having the oral fluid as part of a suite of tests as opposed to the sole test for someone who's in a remote area?
I would absolutely always suggest a suite of tests, even for very, very remote people. Remember, we have other matrices that can also be collected virtually. Oral fluid can be collected virtually. So can blood spot testing for phosphatidylethanol be collected virtually. So can nail testing, which is very, very similar to hair testing in the panels that are available and the studies that support it. So we have all three of those matrices, other than, obviously, we can't collect urine virtually, remotely, but you can collect oral fluid, nails, and blood.
And is there a difference in cost amongst those three?
I'm going to have to let Sean address
Okay.
that because happily, I keep out of the numbers.
All right, thank you so much.
Except for quantitative values in specimens. I stated
Okay.
those.
So of the three matrices that Dr. Ferguson mentioned that we are able to do virtually, oral fluid is the cheapest of the three, and I would say is relatively around the same price as what you see for urine testing. Nail and blood tends to be higher. The blood spot tends to be about the same price as a blood test done in clinic. So prices are relative that way. Virtual to in-person collection prices are fairly even across the board.
Okay, thank you.
I had just a couple of questions too, and I was under the impression that this was something that was going to allow probationers who, live too far away or were traveling, they would basically take a swab and put it in an envelope and mail it away. And I mean, I think we have learned today that's not really going
So-
to happen.
So it can come close to that. So I'll talk about operationally our virtual monitored collections. So these are the collections that are done for those individuals who do live in rural areas for other, accounts that we handle. And so what we do is we send out a number of kits. So generally we send out enough supplies for 5 tests, which would be
Okay.
10 specimen tube for collection, because we always do split specimen, as Dr. Ferguson said.
Okay.
If the individual is selected for testing and it is oral fluid and they have the approval to do a virtual collection, they're provided with a link that they go online and they schedule a time to do that virtual collection with one of our monitors. At that time, that when it comes up, they join the meeting. The collection is done all live. We don't, review a recording after the fact. The collector stays with the donor the entire time. Collection generally takes roughly about 20 minutes on average to complete a virtual collection. We start with having the individual open the collection kit with the monitor online. If the kit has already been opened, it is not able to be used. Each one of the tubes comes in a sealed package, and they have to hold it up to the camera so that the monitor can see that nothing, that the tube hasn't been opened. The entire process is done, and then we have the the specimens put into the FedEx shipping container and sealed. We obtain the tracking number for that so that we can track where it is in the transit process. So it is something that can be done for rural and people who do go on travel.
Okay, thank you. That's
Additionally,
helpful.
Tricia, one of the things that was shared with me when I first started opening up this stuff is that they do DNA testing to ensure that the specimen belongs to the
Yeah.
participant as well. Is that correct, Sean? Did I hear that correctly?
We do not. So we do
not,
not.
okay.
There are labs out there that do offer DNA testing, and we are not ones that offer it. And Dr. Ferguson, I know, will talk to DNA testing in this space.
He's leaving you hanging, Sean.
Yeah.
Got it. Figured it out. All right. We have been the victims of a whole lot of hard selling about DNA. And I'm going to just make it really, really brief. Yeah, DNA is a great matrix. It works. It does not work real well in urine because urine tends to degrade it. But the problem is that the collection is still the important thing. And if you don't have a properly witnessed collection, I don't care what your matrix is, then we don't know how the DNA got into the specimen that's being submitted to the lab. If you go online and buy synthetic urine, and they're making synthetic urine look pretty awfully good nowadays, okay? And you spit into that urine, you got DNA in that urine, right? You can figure out some way to do that for every matrix that we test. So there is no substitute for a properly monitored collection. And we've gone to a whole lot of trouble to make sure the collectors that we use for virtual collections know what they're doing. Nothing's perfect in the world, but I think that's about as close as we can get. Does that help?
That sure helps me. I mean, that level of safeguarding is, encouraging to me. Shannon, were you going to add a few points to this presentation?
Muted, Shannon. We're not able to hear you.
I said, no, I think Dr. Ferguson and Sean are probably giving you the pros and cons of this saliva test. The small detection window, the time it takes, it's about an hour on the phone with someone and having to get through that test. So, I mean, and obviously we don't want to just do saliva tests. We don't want to just do blood tests. We don't want to just do urine tests. It's not really a good random mix of tests to ensure that we're capturing everything. So I think they're kind of covering that. But more than happy once they're gone, if you have any additional questions, or maybe we can bring them back next month in front of the full board, because I'm sure the full board would also have some questions on this topic as well.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm sure the board would have questions because this has come up, repeatedly, and it's not exactly the way I pictured it. But as one possible test, like you're working that day and you're working a 12-hour shift and the lab is only open, certain period of time, rather than having to take work time off, maybe you could do a swab one day, 1 week, a month or something like that. You can see how this, could fulfill, one of the requirements, as long as it wasn't, you didn't rely on it too heavily.
Right, but we don't schedule them out, so they would have to make sure that they have a test in order to do that. Because of course, if you let them know in advance that you have a saliva test coming up on Wednesday, then we can prepare so we can pass that test on Wednesday.
No, but Shannon, they said they mail
Yeah.
enough for
They'll
5
mail
tests.
up to 5, and then the participant would need to contact them to get some additional tests. And we have run into situations in where they've asked if they could do saliva, but then they don't have a kit.
Okay.
So we got to make sure that they have kits.
Yeah, okay.
And then
Mrs.
Dr.
Hansel,
Ferguson,
how
I
about-
do have a,
Go ahead.
sorry, I have a couple questions. So you said oral fluid detects 24 to 36 hours. Is that correct?
On average, yeah.
On average. And then urine detects how long on
Urine,
average?
urine detection period really depends more than oral fluid does on the substance itself. Phenobarbital stays in urine for 2 weeks, but the vast majority of analytes that we're looking for in urine are gone in 3 to 5 days.
3 to 5 days. Okay. And then you have the nail and hair. How long can those be relied on?
Scalp hair is 90 days, roughly. All of these are approximates.
Yes.
Hair color, things like that, all have issues. Nails, fingernails, roughly 6 months. Toenails can be 9 months. Blood for phosphatidylethanol is approximately 2 to 4 weeks.
So that's your PEth test. Is that accurate?
That's
It's
correct.
what you were talking. Yeah. Okay. So if we are testing a person, you know, at our uniform standards, we have level 1, there's 52 to 104 per year for a test. And so that's minimum once a week, maximum, you know, twice a week. So if we were doing some kind of rotation where oral fluids were part of that, with, you know, a once a week or a twice a week testing, it could potentially detect misuse of any substance, especially if we're doing random testing, types of testing as well, where we throw in a PEP test if it's an alcohol drug of choice, or if we do a hair from the scalp test within the next month or two to confirm whether that was a positive or a negative. And then with our level 2 testing, it says 36 to 104 a year. So we do drop that down where it might be every other week, but potentially could increase it to as much as twice a week, even for our level 2s. So I'm just wondering, I met with the executive officer of Montana Board of Nursing, and I know that she said they are contracted with our prior vendor, Vault, prior Maximus and Vault, and that they use a lot of oral fluid testing and tend to rely on that more than we have. And so I would love to kind of maybe strike a balance of some sort and not go overboard on relying upon this, but knowing that if we did utilize it and put it into the mix, because our uniform standard says random test type as well as random test dates, including weekend and holidays, just to make sure that we are doing our due diligence with that. And so I will pause, but I have one more question after that, just to clarify on a type of test that was brought up.
Okay, I just want to throw this out there. Okay, we, as I said, and as you are saying, recommend random matrix selection, absolutely, and random testing and random everything. But when you cannot use one different matrix to confirm or validate a result from a previous matrix. In other words, if you get a hair test following a urine or following a oral fluid testing, hair has different uptake, different retention. Nails have different uptake, different retention. It will add perspective to the previous result that you've gotten, but the previous result will stand. The second test that you did in that different matrix does not validate or invalidate the previous result, but it adds perspective. Does that make sense?
Yes, that was great information. I appreciate that. And then I know Sean had mentioned a blood blot or a blood dot.
Blood
Is
spot.
that a spot? Sorry. Is that a home-based collection as well, or does that?
It can be. Sure, it can be.
It could be.
Yeah.
So is that something that you're seeing other people rely on? I know the one thing in our uniform standards, it says that specimen collectors shall adhere to the current U.S. Department of Transportation specimen collection guidelines. You did touch on that when you were bringing that up on the oral fluids. Is that one that is accepted by DOT as well?
Blood is not, no.
Blood is not. Okay.
And there are different issues with all of these matrix collections that aren't the same in a different matrix. You know, we've had issues with the Montana people purposefully messing with the blood spot. In other words, you know, you've got to get a good testable spot on the card, and if, for example, if collector's not watching carefully and the finger goes down and messes it around, the test is no good. So we have to have very carefully observed and well-trained collectors and collections.
And Vault has that.
Yes, we do.
Great, thank you. And then just to wrap up, I know that at a previous meeting, Vault did a presentation that said that you guys have 373 collection sites throughout California. 49 of the 58 counties have collection sites, and they said that 9 do not. And that is Alpine, Calaveras, Colusa, Glen, Lassen, Mariposa, Modoc, Mono, and Sierra. And do you guys have plans to go into those areas to seek contracts with collection sites? Is that something you're expanding to? Because we get reach outs a lot that says, you know, I'm in this area, I have to drive to another state to go to a collection site, especially when you're looking at our rural eastern border California area. They're saying that they can't meet that. They're getting off work and they're having to go into Nevada to get tested. And then drive, you know, 2 hours back in. And so just want to make sure that we're addressing all of these things so that we do have a plan moving forward. And I don't know if that would go to you, Dr. Ferguson, or to Sean, or if that's a different presentation later, because we know we're looking at these alternative testing types to really try to kind of mitigate those counties that don't have a testing site, or mitigate the people that have to travel extensive distances after they've worked their 3 or 4 days a week. They've attended all of their support group meetings, you know, 2 to 3 times a week. They're doing their daily check-ins. They're calling in and having to test once or twice a week. And they're saying they're showing up and there's no female staff member there, or they're showing up and there's not a male staff member there. So they can't complete their testing, or they're showing up and it's closed. And they rushed right after work, but got caught in traffic. You know, we hear a lot of reasons why people can't get testing done, which is why the board and committee is considering this. And I was wondering if you have any insight onto, you know, what Vault can do to help us mitigate this, including maybe recommending some of these tests.
I can address that regarding collection sites. So that is something, you know, we're currently looking into. What I'll share is, you know, as is known, we were acquired last year by a larger company, and one of the projects that we're doing with that acquisition is kind of comparing all of our collection sites. So what collection sites, you know, do they work with that we don't have in our database? So taking a look, you know, to kind of fill in the gaps there, while also continuing to research in those areas, you know, those counties, if there are collection sites available, are they willing to work with a third-party administrator like Vault, and trying to fill some of those gaps. So it is something we are continually to look into, but with the acquisition, that, you know, puts us in a better position with more data to see how we can fill some gaps.
Are there any further questions or comments from either committee members or staff? One thing I wondered about, Lori, was, or maybe this is to Shannon, is this says discussion and possible action. I didn't hear anybody talking about action and but we did suggest maybe we would bring this up at the board meeting next month. So
Yeah,
that's
so
something
there,
that I'd be inclined to do.
so there are various things that can be done. Obviously, you can take no action and nothing needs to be done because it's a possible action. And you can treat this as information only. You could ask that you defer any action to the board, which would then mean we bring this forward and we have this discussion with the board. If you're feeling pretty firm on kind of where you want to go, you could recommend that the board consider approving the use of oral fluid tests for probationers and interventions. And you can give what you kind of are recommending, knowing that when it does come to the board, they would have your recommendation and then the other, I think we're at 5 members now that are remaining, would be able to hear it, knowing kind of where you're coming from. So those are the various options that can be done.
Chair Wynn?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Committee Member Cormack.
I wonder, one thing we haven't asked, it's currently offered for the intervention program, right? And I guess we haven't heard any issues. I mean, what are the concerns? What are the, let me see if I can phrase this correctly. Is there anything we've learned from it being used in the intervention program that would cause us to not want to use it in the probation program? And that's a question for Vault and for, I think, our staff.
As far as for us, Tim Bunger, the deputy chief, just recently had a meeting with Vault to get some more information on this testing because, you know, just as they talked about, if they run out of tests, that will become an issue, the detection window. So I think as long as we use it in conjunction with all of the other types of testing, so we truly have random tests, as long as we're not looking at, we do have maybe some individuals that would like to do nothing but oral testing. Unfortunately, that's not the route, or that's not what we're doing now. And it's been recommended, and I don't anticipate we will just consider only one test type because then it's not really random. We can't really cover our bases. We are looking into continuing on and doing it with probation as well. So Tim has been having those meetings. He just had it just a few weeks ago, I believe, to try and wrap up finalizing some things that we need for probation.
Okay, so I'm not hearing we've had any problems with it in the intervention program.
Not outside of the issues that they've already talked about.
Okay, but just to be crystal clear to the people who've requested it, this will not be like, I'm just gonna do oral fluids and that way I don't have to go anywhere ever. Nor is it, I wanna go on a trip, so I'm gonna pack a kit and take it with me because that way I don't have to test, right? In person? Okay.
Correct.
But it could potentially serve as a backstop for the time when things fall through, right? It could be something everyone has them on standby, and I understand it's not ideal. They've been selected to test. It was supposed to be a different kind of test. For whatever reason, they can't get there or it doesn't happen. They could use this as a backstop, to prove to the probation officer that, they had not used in the prior 24 to 36 hours.
Correct.
Okay, so, with that, Chair Winna, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts and that of Committee Member Lawler, but I'm certainly willing to recommend that the board consider offering oral fluid testing for probationers as part of, and I'm sorry, the Vault people are confusing me. I think of a matrix as a list of things. Are you saying a matrix is a test?
Matrix is the part of the body being tested. Urine is a matrix, blood is a matrix.
Okay, all right. So I'm just going to say as one of the test options.
Yeah.
I think he used the term suite of tests.
Okay, as part of this suite of tests.
So here are my thoughts. I appreciate you making the motion. I don't feel particularly comfortable making a recommendation to the full board today, just based on the last 45 minutes of, presentation. I would be maybe more comfortable directing staff to work with Vault to come up with a recommendation for us so that there's a little bit more analytics. I like where you're going. I do believe that the intervention program and the probation program should have the same, opportunities, the same options available. But I don't feel really comfortable just today kind of making a recommendation to the full board. And
Fair
since
enough.
staff has
Yeah.
been working on it, I'd love staff to work on a little bit more and then make a recommendation to us.
So
I'd also-
I want to jump in really quick. One, we do need to address that Allison does have a motion, and that motion either has to be withdrawn or fail before
I'm
we
happy to
can do
withdraw.
that.
I'll
But couple other things is Vault doesn't typically recommend to us how to do our programs, right? They can tell us what they offer. So I don't think having board staff working with Vault to have a recommendation would be something that is typically done, as the uniform standards and our program is something that we would collect data, we would bring it to the board for consideration, but not having a vendor make a recommendation to us that we're contracted with on their services. So the one thing that we could take into consideration is Vault offers this, and it is available to us. The other thing, just to kind of talk about just the committee board makeup. The reason that we're holding committees with board members outside of the mandated board meetings is to do the work in advance of going to a full board, to help alleviate some of the pressure on those incredibly full board meeting
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
Which is why, Tricia, you're on the education licensing
Yeah.
committee, which is why you guys make a lot of recommendations on ELC, so that when it does go to the board, they can either accept that after reading and doing their own research, or they can pull something out and say, you know what, I understand the committee recommend this, but I want a more robust discussion. And so that's also why we didn't hold nurse practice committee today, and we didn't hold a ledge committee today, because when it comes to ledge, we know that we need a full board position, or it does not affect the legislative process. So if we're holding an EIIC committee and all we're receiving is information that is just going to be repeated at a board meeting, we may want to consider not holding EIIC committees. Because that is a lot of extra time and such that is done, and we're only mandated to hold board meetings. So if you guys do feel comfortable to make recommendations from an EIIC standpoint, I would like to have the committee do the work and make the recommendations to the board as necessary. And it looks like David has his hand raised to make a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
I was gonna say that committee member Cormac took the words out of my mouth and beat me to it with the motion, because I personally am satisfied to the point where, as we continue to monitor this, I'm willing to make a recommendation to the board that we absolutely give this as an alternative when necessary to the probationers, so that there is equity between the two groups in terms of what tests are available to them. So I think I absolutely agree with what Lori said. She articulated that much better than I could. And I've thought about that a lot. Sitting in board meetings, listening to information without recommendations from other committees, wondering why the committee met in the first place. So I'd rather we take a recommendation to the full board than do this all over again next month.
Thank you. I appreciate that, both Lori and David. I do very much appreciate that. I wasn't really trying to get out of the work as much as, I don't really know about the costs, what the cost differential is. And when you look at, some tests are good for 72 hours, some are good for 36 hours, some are good for 90 days, some are good for 6 months. I don't feel like I've really got a handle on that, but I would be willing to go along and say, yeah, I think we should explore alternatives. I do think there should be equity between probationers and those in the intervention program. So, I mean, I am for, I am for that. It feels like there's a lot of loose ends, but I am willing to go ahead and support Ms. Cormack's motion.
And this obviously is not the silver bullet. It's the cheapest test, it's the quickest test, but it's one more. And if there's anything we want in this situation, it's more data. I'm absolutely against testing in other environments and industries, but here, absolutely. I think it's a good approach to what we're trying to do with our intervention members, participants, and I think it would be helpful to add it to the probationers.
Can I just make a statement? So in discussions, all we need to do is add it as an addendum to our current contract with Vault to add that oral fluid testing in addition to the already suite of testing that we provide.
Okay. Okay. Why don't we go out to public comment at this point, and then we'll wrap after public comment and we'll take a vote on the motion. Thank you. So board moderator, would you
Sorry.
please take?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Chair Wynn, I had withdrawn it. Would you like me to reinstate my motion?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, and it sounds like, Ms. Johnson, would you like me to clarify that what we're doing is giving staff the ability to modify the agreement?
No, that's actually too much into the weeds. And so I will work with that with my team on how this gets implemented. You guys would just be supporting the implementation and use of oral fluids as part of the testing suite to be consistent with intervention and probationers.
Okay, would it be helpful if I restated my motion before we go to public comment?
It would be, and then David, or would you be the second, or
Yeah,
I
David will
don't
be the
remember how that
second.
worked. I believe David was the second.
Yeah.
Yes, I was.
All right, then. I will make the motion that we include oral fluid testing as part of the testing suite for the probation program to align with the intervention program.
And I second David
And
Lawler.
its staff, is that sufficient? Yes.
Yes.
Great. So board moderator, would you please take us to public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Wynn, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in our location in Sacramento. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please, and thank you very much. So are there any final comments before we go to a vote from committee members? Okay, hearing none. I'm going to go to a vote. Wynn votes yes. Committee member Cormack,
Cormack, yes.
committee member Lawler.
Lawler, yes.
That motion passes. Thank you very much, and thank you, gentlemen from Vault.
Thank you.
So the next item up is item 4.0, which is information only, and it's the Enforcement Division updates.
And that's me. Hi, everybody.
Thank you,
Shannon
Shannon.
Johnson, the Enforcement Division Chief. The updates, I'm not going to read through this entire document word for word for you guys, but I'll just kind of touch on some points. So as you know, we're still in the NCSBN study pilot, which the data collection began back in 2022. So we'll keep you updated as we go with that. We're still also recruiting qualified registered nurses. with professional backgrounds for our expert practice consultants. Some of the areas that are in more need than others are listed within this agenda item summary. As always, they can reach us at the RN website under the enforcement tab, expert witness, to see what the criteria is to become an expert witness, as well as the application to apply. Complaint intake, we're still utilizing the complaint prioritization referral guidelines known as CPRG, and triaging cases in collaboration with DFI and BRN Investigations. And the complaint intake unit continues to triage cases and obtain preliminary documentation for our investigative units prior to sending the cases over. For our discipline unit, as of March 5th, about 14% of our cases had been pending at the Attorney General's office for over a year. That's up slightly from the past years, but we're looking into it, and I believe that number can start coming down here very soon. As of April 2025, the cite and fine unit has moved. We did a reorganization probably, I want to say about 7 years ago. We moved our cite and fine unit under the manager that oversaw all of intervention, the legal desk who processes all of our disciplinary documentation and posts to the website and National Council, and they also oversaw citations. We are now moving citations back under discipline. That is where it was prior. That's pretty much where it should be, under that umbrella in enforcement and not under that intervention manager. So we've moved that unit, just to let you know, and that took place in April. Probation, they're currently working on enhancements. In fact, I just reviewed not only the video slides that we're going to be putting online for our presentation for probation, letting people know what to expect and everything surrounding probation, as well as a FAQ for everyone. So we just got done reviewing that. It's, our getting to our final draft, and hopefully that will be up running soon. In fact, I had just received another email to do a final review of the FAQs. So that's coming along. So hopefully we'll have that up soon. As far as the stats, we did provide this time fiscal year to date for the last 4 fiscal years. And then the last column is the current fiscal year to date. We'll continue to provide this for you, so you have a running fiscal year total. And then also with those fiscal year, I did add in, as requested, some graph charts, just so you can kind of have a visual. I only picked a certain, some certain areas. If you want to see different areas in those graph charts, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to add a specific area if you would like to those graphs. Or if there's any other stats that we're missing, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to provide it. Are there any questions at all on that?
Just really quick, committee member Cormac, I know that you had asked for kind of various kind of maybe line graphs or something. We would love for your input to see whether or not these graphs are acceptable. If you'd want to see other ones, this addition of the graphing was specifically done to try to address your questions on that. So we would love feedback so that if we do need to make alterations prior to the board, we can do that for you.
Chair Nguyen, may I?
Please.
Oh, no, this is great. I don't feel the need for any more attached to this. But this level of detail consistently, I think, shows us, convictions increasing over the past number of years, applicants decreasing, complaints pending, continuing to go up. And then the first, the bar chart is really helpful, because if you're not the kind of person who can scan numbers, then this shows you what's going up and what's going down. So I think this is really useful data. And, I think it's possible this will be useful when we do our sunset reviews as well, because, not everyone can look at the numbers. And so using this level of, this level of information is exactly what I have been wanting. I'm Yeah, all good.
I think one of the things that I would like to seek some feedback on is on the numbers, it's showing the unit, like the number itself is increasing, like say it went from 50 people that had citations last year to 100 people that have citations this year. And I think it shows that, and I'm just using numbers, I'm not using accurate numbers. But I think what we're missing in this is the growth of RNs, right? Our RN licenses have changed exponentially. So we
Right.
might need to look at it instead of just looking at raw numbers, look at a percentage, right? Because I think that's where we get a lot of information from our public comment that they're saying everybody that's done this has not got their license back. Well, that's not accurate. And we're having to kind of rebuttal a lot of that information in these public meetings. So what I would like to ask for you guys to consider is adding a percentage of the population kind of metric in there. So that if we went from only, and the reason I say this is because I do a lot in licensing, less in enforcement until, this last year where you guys have asked me to kind of step in more, is in licensing, they were saying that we were taking longer and longer to process license. Well, we went from having 10,000 applications to 20,000 applications to 40,000 applications a year. We weren't taking longer to process applications. We were taking in way more applications, right?
Yeah.
So if we went from having 520,000 RNs to having 550,000 RNs, and we saw an only increase of 1 or 2, then our percentage is actually going down instead of increasing, right? So I would love to have you guys consider maybe adding an additional metric in there to take into consideration the growth of our licensees or a decrease of our licensees, so we can look at a percentage instead of just raw numbers.
Well, EO Melby, yeah, that was the one thing I would have asked for, but I decided not to because I've already asked for so much. Because I also think that will help the public to understand, are complaints against nurses increasing, or, sorry, go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
Oh, I just want to know, can I clarify? That's what I was going to ask, is how would you like to see that? Is it just for this current fiscal year? Do you want it for every fiscal year? And if you want it for every fiscal year, is it on a specific section like the number of complaints received and what percentage of population? Or do you just want us to add in the actual population below those numbers so you can see what it was at that fiscal year?
Well, I'll be interested to hear what EO Melby says, but I think it's probably both. I think we need the total number, and then I also think we need to do the math for people, so they aren't having to get out their calculator. So do the total and the percentage. I think it's relevant for complaints, and if I just sort of whip through what the rest of it is, maybe in discipline as well.
I can put something together and present it when we go to board, and then if we need to, just add to it and edit a little bit, we can do that. So I'll come up with maybe what I want to present for board, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I guess one other place would be probation, because, we have this conversation every time we talk so much about it, and there's about 600 people on probation at any one time, which is a small percent. Of course, it's a super important part of what we do. So, but okay, so that's the numbers themselves. But I do think this will, yeah, okay. I'm very happy with this level of information. I don't have additional questions you haven't answered with respect to the trends that we haven't discussed in prior meetings. Ms. Johnson, I did have down to ask you about the probation video, and it's still soon.
Yes, we've actually been in discussion with our contact that will actually present this over to DCA to get it into a video for us. We've got the slides finished and reviewed. We're just waiting on now the final FAQ, and we'll send it over. The recording is actually with DCA, or the slides are with DCA, and they're currently creating that video.
Okay, and then the only thing I'll ask is if it's possible, and again, I know our website is our other perennial topic that I know you guys love me bringing up. The other one would be like, will there be a way for people after having watched that video or read through the FAQs to say, I still have a question? Like we should have a place so we're gathering feedback on what people didn't understand or still have questions about.
Yeah, with everything that we put out there, we include our enforcement email. They can always contact us if they have further questions. That enforcement email is constantly being reviewed at any time. I mean, we don't have more than 15, 20 emails in there. They're definitely being responded to very quickly. If not that day, the next day, unless it's a weekend, of course. So we will add that to the end of everything we have, the enforcement email. Of course, if it's intervention related, we have the intervention email for all of our intervention items, so they can contact us there as well.
Great. So that'll just be, I'm sure there'll be a version 2.0 at some point, and hopefully any questions people have after reviewing the material will be incorporated in the next version.
Correct, yes.
Okay, that's all I had on 4.0. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Member Cormack. I also agree. I thought the numbers were presented very, very well and completely this time. Thank you.
Welcome.
Committee Member Lawler, any comments or questions?
No, I agree. It's much easier to read. It's very thorough and comprehensive. I do like the idea of adding the percentages where, for example, the 2 pages I saw, one was, I think, citation. I'm not looking at it now. One was number of days to complete. The year 23-24 had a very noticeable spike, and it will be nice to see how that's put back in perspective with the increase in the number of original applications or whatnot that
And
came through that caused such a difference.
And
So
I
thank
don't
you
think
for that,
that's going to
Shannon.
show, David. I'll just tell you now, I do not think that's going to show in the licensee population. That the decrease, there was a decrease prior to that increase, and it was based on the fact that we were trying to interpret the language within the citations in the California Code of Regulations, and we were gaining some insight on that and how we need to move forward with citations. We got clarification, and so there was a slight backlog. And so you see an increase in that 23-24 year because we started sending out and we got out all of that backlog and got caught up on all of our citations.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Chair Wynn, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, Shannon, I can't remember. Did you get all the way through before we began questioning?
Yeah, I think I did.
Thank you. So I'd like the board moderator, please, to take us to public comment.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, I would like to make a comment. Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comment. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, I would like to make a comment. Committee Chair Wynn, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in our location in Sacramento. Would you like me to close this window?
Please, thank you very much. This is an information item only, so we're going to close out this item and move to the next item, which is item 5.0. Again, an information only item, and this is the investigations division updates.
Board moderator, I believe we'll need to elevate Nicole unless Nicole's in the room with Shannon and
She is in the room with me, so she's right here.
Is she gonna work from your computer?
Yes, here,
Okay.
I will there we go.
Wonderful.
There's
Thank you.
Nicole.
She was elevated,
Hello.
but okay.
Great. Thank you, Nicole.
No problem. Let
You
me
wanna go to
see.
yours?
That's okay. I can stay here. That's fine. Let me just
It's an
readjust. this.
FYI, it says Shannon Johnson on your box in all of our screens, which could be confusing
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
but
I can
just
transfer
move
to
to
mine.
yours.
That's no problem.
if
Okay.
she's already admitted and got the privilege of.
I still see that I'm in attendees right now.
Oh, I thought
You can unmute and your video.
there she's been promoted.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me start my video.
We are not able to hear you, Nicole.
That's okay.
Now
Can
we
you
can.
hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry for the technical difficulty, so thank you for your patience. Nicole Bowles, Deputy Chief of Investigations, and I will be providing the Investigations Division update. So we continue to work with the Office of Organizational Improvement on our mapping to assess our workflows and improve our timeframes. In March 2025, a workload analysis was conducted on the investigations analyst position for budget change proposal purposes. The budget change proposal is a proposal to change the level of service or funding sources for activities authorized by the legislature or to propose new program activities not currently authorized. The work analysis supports BRN's request for 4 additional analyst positions with investigations. So right now we're in the budget change concept phase, where we have provided this concept to DCA, and now we have to review our budget to see if we have the funding to move forward with a formal budget change proposal. Investigations continues to adhere to the recommendation number 7 of the 2016 audit by the California State Auditor. As of April 4th, 2025, the full-time special investigators have an average of 28 cases. Due to the high caseloads, the supervising special investigator ones, and I continue to actively work these cases. Investigations received 109 cases in February 2025, which is a decrease from the 185 cases received in January 2025. I need to stop here to highlight a correction in the data that we need to make. So originally it was identified that we had received 185 cases in January of 2025. After further review, we discovered that that number is not as high. It's actually 103. So I will make this statement again at our full board meeting. We are continuing to recruit for 1 full-time position in the Central California region. And limited term investigators statewide. We do have a candidate in the hiring process for the Central region, and we're hoping to get that person on board shortly. As Shannon had mentioned earlier, we've provided a table with investigation statistics for the past 4 fiscal years and a fiscal year to date. Unfortunately, the graph is, we did not provide a graph for investigations. That was my oversight that it didn't make it onto this document, but I will request that it makes it onto the document for the full board. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very, very much, Ms. Bowles. Yeah, any committee members have any questions for Ms. Bowles?
Not a committee member, but definitely want to add some additional information.
Please do, Lori. Yeah.
One of the reasons that we're being very clear on looking at the influx of cases and the outflow of cases is we have cases that are growing and being unassigned. And so the reason that we've asked for the budget change proposal and to get additional positions in is as it says, it is supported with numbers supporting our workload. In-state process, which is different than what I was aware of prior to taking this position, If I was in a private sector, I would say, wow, we really increase in cases. I can only do 30 per investigator. I have, 300 cases that need assigned. I need 10 more people. Let me get 10 people in. And I would advertise, I would look at my budget, and I would hire people in, and I'd get on board and I'd get this done. That's not what happens in state service. And so we have cases that need to be worked. We have cases that need to be assigned, and we don't have enough people to get through it in a quick manner. And so with that, because we are seeing the growth of cases of being unassigned, we're seeing aging of cases that are needing to be assigned, we have asked for a budget change proposal. That budget change proposal hopefully will allow us to bring in up to 4 more people to assist in this process. We have shown that we have the budget to support it. We have shown that we have the workload to support it. There is still a possibility that it could be denied. I just need everybody as part of the committee and ultimately our board next month to understand that, is we don't have control over whether or not that gets approved or denied. We put in our request, we put in our concept, we say we have the workload, we say we have the budget, we say we have the facilities to support this. It still will go through DCA. It will still go out to the legislator. It will still have to be accepted in order for us to get any additional help to manage this. So I want to make sure that that is something that you guys are all aware of, that that is a process that happens within state service that may not be known to the public. It was not known to me. And so if you have people saying, why is the BRN not doing this? It's not that we're ignoring it. It's that we have to go through a process that is clearly defined on how this occurs. So we do have an increasing caseload. We do have an aging caseload. We are working diligently to get that addressed. We have also identified that there may be assistance that needs to be done, and that assistance would be in having more people available to help us. And I know that that is always something that is incredibly scrutinized as we go into sunset as well. So we are putting this out there in a public forum so that the public knows that we're aware of this, so that they know that we're working on this, so that we know, the board members and committee members know that it is occurring too. And it's not a, oh, we weren't aware of it kind of process. So we are aware of it. We're working on it. I appreciate all the help that my team has been offering to address this. We have supervisors who don't typically take assignment or taking assignment. We have Nicole's taking assignment. We have my assistant executive officer. She's jumping in and assisting in any way possible as well. They're doing case reviews. They're doing expanded triage. They're doing everything that they possibly can to get through, which is why, again, we're really hoping that these positions do get granted and we're able to do this. So just understand why we're putting this information out, that we're really highlighting this information so that everybody knows that this is what we're up against.
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate that. If there are no further questions or comments, Ms. Bowles, we'll go ahead and take it out to public comment. Great. Would the board moderator please open up public comment for us?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in the request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Nguyen, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in our location in Sacramento. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. And thank you very much. So that is also information only, so no need to take a motion or a vote. We will go ahead and move to item number 6. Again, an information only item. Shannon, are you going to take this one?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Again, I'm Shannon Johnson, the board's Enforcement Division Chief. This is agenda item 6.0, intervention program updates. So the management, we continue to attend all of the intervention evaluation committee meetings, assisting to provide education and support to the IEC members and participants, as well as our new vendor, Premier, and identify any gaps in the regulation for the intervention program. At the February 28th, 29th, board meeting, the board voted to allow board staff to begin drafting the regulatory language for revision and or additions to the CCRs, the California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Article 4.1, which are the intervention program guidelines. The vendor contract with Maximus expired December 31st. So as you are aware, we have the new vendor. They were awarded the intervention contract and it was Premier Health. And we are working with them and they're working with DCA's 8 other boards, healing arts boards, including registered nursing, to continue the transition for us and all of the participants involved. The board continues to recruit IEC members with knowledge and experience in the substance use disorder treatment, recovery, and mental health. At the February 28th, 29th board meeting, board voted to allow the board staff to reestablish up to 5 additional IECs. We do have some new applicants ready for that subcommittee that we'll be sending over shortly, as well as some possible reappointments that have ended their first 4-year term. And also included on this agenda item is the information if anyone listening is interested in becoming an IEC member, and also for more information where they can locate that on our website. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Shannon. Do committee members have any questions for Shannon on this item?
No, none from me. Thank you, Shannon.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So I'm gonna jump in a little bit here real quick, also, and just provide some additional information here. So we were approved to do 5 additional, up to 5 additional IECs in February. Obviously, we haven't opened any new ones yet, so that is in the process. I don't know necessarily where we're at in that process, so it's just at the application part. Shannon, is that accurate? Okay. And then it's going to go to committee soon, the subcommittee?
Yes, we're preparing the applications and the resume CVs for submission to the subcommittee.
Okay, and then Tricia, I know you're on the subcommittee as well as I believe Nilu. You guys will be getting that and then scheduling interviews. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. That's my understanding.
Okay. So I know that's in process. I know we're looking at doing that. Other things that are coming up with IECs is I did meet with other the healing art boards within DCA and started a discussion around maybe having DCA legal attend all IECs and DECs, and those are the diversion evaluating committees. We call them intervention evaluating committees. We have our fabulous legal at all of our advisory committees, as well as all of our board committees. And IECs for us are very similar to an advisory committee and a board committee. Sorry, it's kind of hybrid because they do make decisions in lieu of the board versus recommending to the board. They have a little more power than an advisory committee, but they also are serving in representation of our board, which is kind of like an advisory committee. So those are some of the things that having legal representation across all of these 8 healing art boards in their IEC or DEC committees is something that is being floated around. Especially with the new vendor coming on board, right? They're in a learning process. They're trying to implement the contract. They're trying to implement our uniform standards that are standard throughout, but then in each one of our in the contract, each one of us have board specific requirements. And so having that a legal eye on it consistently, we think that would be helpful. Some of the things that were discussed over the last year is participants believed that maybe our board staff were giving legal advice or interpreting regulations and should not have been. Other comments that came out said that the vendor was doing that and that they were overstepping. And so that was one of the reasons why I brought that up, of maybe having a DCA legal in all of the intervention or diversion evaluation committees, just to kind of mitigate that so that that complaint can't continue. One of the things that our staff started doing a few years ago was doing that evaluative process, coming into these meetings, being part of these meetings, and really taking a look at them to see that they're following Bagley-Keene. Some of those issues I think could have been worked out and addressed if legal was part of that, because Reza does an amazing job bringing us back to Bagley-Keene all the time and making sure that that's followed. So that is a recommendation and a discussion point that is happening within the 8 Healing Art boards to see if we can get a little more consistency in the implementation of this. Because we are the largest board with the largest amount of intervention participants. It was something that our staff discovered, and I really think that it would benefit having a kind of eye on the rest of them as well, just to make sure that that drift doesn't happen. There have been a lot of changes with bringing Premier Health on. They're working very hard to kind of get in there. One of the things I do want to bring to the board's attention is in this transition period, the assessment, Shannon, is that the right name for it? The intake assessment or intake evaluation?
No, it's the clinical diagnostic
Clinical
evaluation.
diagnostic, thank you. The clinical diagnostics has been an issue that is still being worked through. Why that's important to bring it out to you guys here is that we may start hearing some public comment on this, because our participants are getting this evaluation completed. It's going into the IEC for review, and the IEC is saying it's not sufficient to make any recommendations on it. So they're having to go back out and get it redone. So that is definitely an issue. And I just want to let you guys know that our board staff, Shannon, Jaspreet, Yvonne, have been in weekly, sometimes twice a week meetings, 3 times a week meetings with Premier to try to get that corrected. It is something that is high priority, and the feedback is being received. We are getting copies of those forms. There is new education going out, and we're trying to get this wrapped up quickly, knowing that Premier has just held the contract for 4 months. So we are working with Premier, but understanding that that is something that has been identified as being a barrier that IEC has now really spoke up and said, we can't continue this way. It needs to be addressed. So just to let you guys know on that. And then a little celebratory thing as well. For the first time in many years, our board staff has been approved to go and attend the National Council of State Boards of Nursing Disciplinary and Intervention Conference. It is being held here in California. And so we do have, typically, we may send 1 or 2. We've got approved to send 6 of our staff to that. And they will be attending that. And so that's fantastic. And hopefully that just helps to just continue to improve our processes with this process.
Of course it will. Thank you. I'm very happy about that. Great. Why don't we open this item up to public comment? Would the board moderator please help us with that, please?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. And activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing in the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comment. I will not give a reminder as time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Nguyen, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in Sacramento. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please, and thank you. So I think that wraps item number 6, information only, and we're going to move to item number 7, which is also information only, and this is Lori's report out.
Thank you. So this would actually be a pretty quick report out. As you can see, the numbers are not increasing, so that's fantastic. Less and less EO reviews coming to me, probably under 5 just this last time period. And the information that's being submitted with them from the IEC is showing that evidence. So that quality assurance that you guys wanted me to take a look at and ensure that the motions that are made have the evidence to support them. I'm seeing that much more consistently now, and we've been able to accept them. Additionally, after coming out of the February board meeting with the updated new motion that is complementing the August motion, saying that there is an understanding that there may be a time when work might be required, that did help to address the 2 intervention participants that were kind of stuck in this loop of re-review, going back in front of IECs and re-review. They were able to move forward. They were able to get an updated contract, and that solved that. So thank you guys for that. But as you can see, the numbers look good. So I'm happy with it, and I love that our public comment is decreasing. So we're still working on this. There are still some things to consider for updates. But I think we're confirming by bringing this forward that we're moving in the right direction. I do want to put out, just for the committee members to be aware of, there is a bill out there, AB 408, that is written by Bierman, and that is the medical board's brand new intervention program that they are trying to put forward. They're not calling it intervention or diversion, but they are pulling themselves out of the uniform standards that DCA has utilized. And so that we've heard in public comment from some of the participants is saying that the med board does such and such. I did want to let you guys know that I have seen that pop up actually in writing now, and it is AB 408. Again, that is for med board, that is not for BRN. And so we are still under the Department of Consumer Affairs and our uniform standards and our current rules and regulations that govern that. But that is an interesting bill. I think there's a lot of really great things on that. So just bringing that to your guys' attention there. And then lastly, we will be at the board meeting as part of just taking a look and doing this deep dive for you. We are going to bring forward, if you guys, for discussion, not if, but before discussions, we're adding the nursing support group facilitator meetings for discussion at the board. So I'll be having more information to present there to share with you guys and provide some additional input as we continue to work through the various aspects of the intervention program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lori. You know, I think we're all very aware of how a busy person became even busier by you taking on this additional work. And I think the statistics bear out that it was, you know, really worth doing. So, you know, thanks for all your hard work on that. I really appreciate it. How about other committee members? Any comments or questions on this item? Go ahead, board member Cormack.
Yeah, EO Melby deserves, of course, a ton of credit for having to manage the process at the end, but I know that it's been a real team effort on the part of the BRN staff. And obviously the IECs have had to meet more often and that doesn't even begin to get at, the transition of the vendor and participants, it's certainly been difficult. It seems like the ship has steadied, right? So again, let's remember there's still a lot of, there's movement underneath that, but it definitely looks like the ship has steadied and we've got, sort of we managed the completions out that needed to happen. But just the one thing that I noticed, and I think it makes total sense, is the number of participants seen by an IEC in the first quarter of this year is substantially lower than it had been. And that's for two reasons I can imagine. One is we have a new vendor, right, who's working through that. And the other is that we actually got a lot of people seen, right, in the last 6 months of the past year. So those numbers might jump out at people. A, we have fewer, substantially fewer participants than we did 6 months ago because people have completed. B, it's a new vendor. C, like we had a lot of people seeing. So those numbers might just be, unless people look at them with the context.
And I think another thing with those numbers that I think is really important is when the board started hearing all the public comments and just the outcry, the comment that you made just now, Allison, where it was not me. It was definitely Shannon, Jasper, and Yvonne jumping into action, scheduling additional IECs, IEC committee members really stepping in and jumping into this and holding long meetings. I was not a part of those meetings. That is all them. And so the work that needed to be done to get all of those participants through and seen in an IEC and getting those decisions done was really just a teamwork there, and I can take no credit for that. What we're also seeing here is that we're scheduling our IECs as routine, where they meet quarterly. We are desperately trying not to schedule them back to back. We're trying not to schedule them in 2-day meetings. Those were some of the tools that we used towards the end of the year to get all these people through. Some of the metrics and stuff that we're seeing right now, excuse me, for an 8-hour IEC meeting is a solid number, is about 13 participants that could be seen during that time frame. We have meetings that we held last year that had 20 participants, right? But we then heard in public comment where they're like, it feels like we're just being pushed through. It feels like we don't have time to have the conversations. And our staff really took that into consideration and are working with IECs to make sure that there are ample time for the participants to have that face-to-face conversation with the members. And just so you guys know, face-to-face doesn't mean it has to be standing there next to them. It's virtual as well. So really looking at the overall process, right? Not just kind of rushing them through, but getting that feedback and giving what the participant is requesting. So we are going to see less people seen on a monthly basis. We do have the ability to add in those additional 5 IECs and schedule them as needed. They would go into this quarterly rotation as well. And then another topic that will be brought forth in our board meeting is for the board to vote on is previously, prior to the issues identified this last year, is our participants had an assigned IEC. If they were IEC 1, they were seen by IEC 1 every time. During the push to really kind of get people in and getting their problems addressed, and that had to be done through an IEC, a person that was assigned to IEC 1 may also have been seen by IEC 8 and IEC 12 and IEC 3. And that is something we could continue, but really from the suggestion of the staff, they have shared that IECs have a difficult time considering people that they're not familiar with. And so it is a lot of prep time, a lot of review, a lot of question and answer during the time. So that is something we'll be bringing forward at the next board meeting for consideration as well, to see whether or not that is a practice we want to continue, whether we want to have it as an on-call basis, or whether that's something we would like to stick with the assigned IECs. Other kind of comments around the IECs is potentially having a designated IEC that specifically looks at relapse, having a designated IEC that specifically looks at successful completions or people incoming, and then looking at a process of what needs to be happening for work approvals, if it's like for overtime or something like that. Are there's things that can be done outside of IEC meetings? What are those kind of processes? So really just looking at what we can do to speed this up, be more efficient, but give the participant the time and attention that they need in this process.
Thank you, Lori. Any other questions from committee members?
I
It
have a
looks-
comment and a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to, I guess, congratulate you and say thank you for the dynamic, collaborative effort that you just described, helping right this ship. I remember thinking a couple board meetings ago, it's been a few months, where I said I wanted to wait and see before I said anything else about what we're going through. And this is very positive and this is very encouraging. And so I'm grateful to you all for the hard work, and I hope it's being acknowledged, and I hope you're getting the things you deserve from others as well. My question, and it's not because I want to do it too, but I'm just curious. When the medical board decided to create AB 408 and step away from DCA's standing rules, was there any pushback or fallout or consequence to doing that? Because saying it out loud makes it sound like they're stepping away from Department of Consumer Affairs rules and regulations. And that sounds like, brave is the nicest thing I can way to put that. I think it's great because my complaint earlier, I remember with this issue, with some of our standing rules and our intervention committee and our vendor, I was like, could we do that? But I'm curious, are they getting any noise about that?
I think the noise occurred ahead of time. So I just want to pause really quick. It looks like Allison dropped off. I do want to make sure that we're aware of that and watch for her and the attendees to come back on. We do still have quorum, so we can continue if you guys want to, unless you guys want to pause and see if we're able to get Allison back on. So I just want to ask that question before we move forward. She is an attendees board moderator. Can you elevate her again, please? Okay, and she's come over. Allison, are you able to come off mute and let us know if you're here? So maybe not. Trisha, David, Reza, are you guys okay to continue as we still have quorum and I can answer some of David's questions?
Yeah, I'm comfortable, and we can catch Allison up at when she's back
Okay.
on. Yeah.
So understanding I'm not a med board representative, my understanding of what occurred was that they had some public comment, some outcry on their program, and that during the sunset, they were told to stop using the program and to develop a new one. So I think it was a directive that was given to them. And because of the issues that were identified. That is, again, my interpreting, my understanding, and I can't say that it's gospel. I could find out more information or ask for a med board representative to come to our board meeting and provide information if that's something that you guys are interested in. I do know that AB 408 is a med board sponsored bill. That is something that they have asked to put forward, and it is to answer a lot of the issues that were identified through their public comment and through the sunset hearing that they did go through. Now, I know with meeting with Healing Art Boards, meeting with the vendor, meeting with various people, our uniform standards are constantly looked at on whether or not they're current, whether or not they're evidence-based, whether or not there needs to be adjustments. That comes through Department of Consumer Affairs. We are able to implement it as written. We are able to support it as written. And I think with our IECs being the experts they are in the field, having the direction that they have from our staff, and working with the vendor and the participant, we're still able to move forward in a manner that is supportive of utilizing uniform standards as well as the evidence base. I think it marries well. Can we look at this for future? We do have sunset coming up next year. Absolutely, that'd be up to the board to decide if they wanted to consider something outside of uniform standards, but I would only ask that allow us to kind of work with Premier first, work through this first, and only if in our sunset we were asked to change our intervention program, then do that. I don't want to jump the gun. I really truly believe that our program is good and it's only getting better. And that I think it does. If you look at our outcomes are great. The participants do well through the program. They do come out the other side. They do stay sober. They do go back to practice. There are things around the intervention program that I think we can discuss. One of the things that I found from Washington State is Washington State passed a law where the fees that are utilized in the renewal go to supplement the participants' fees in the intervention program. So that's, of course, a law process, something that have to change in the future. But again, I think with what we're looking at as part of this agenda item of the issues that were brought up, the numbers that we're looking at, I think we're doing a great job with the intervention program as designed today.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like we've done so much work and we're really on the, brink of having a really well run, structured program. I would hate to jump ship, into whatever, like we don't really know what it would even look like. So I'd love to wait and see.
Thank you. Me too. Me too. Take on another bill sponsorship and working through that right now would be very, very difficult. But I hear David and I read AB 408. It looks amazing. I think there's some things that we can look at and take into consideration within our current guidelines right now as well too.
Wondering if we should go out to public comment at this point. And we could have, hear any further comments from committee members after public comment. What do you think? Okay, we're going to go ahead. Board
Welcome back,
moderator.
Allison.
I'm sorry.
I just said welcome back, Allison. She's
Oh,
up
yeah,
and
sorry,
working.
sorry.
I
All
switched
good.
to another computer, so hopefully this will work better.
Okay. Board moderator, would you please take us out to public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." I think it's "I would like to make a comment." 1 second, please. It's "I" or "one." Hold on here.
Maybe a lowercase l.
Or lowercase l.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so my question is very simple. I've been listening for quite some time, and I just want to know, do you guys, does the board have a committee for petitioners for reinstatement? And if not, can they consider having a committee for reinstatement of licensure? I hear a lot of um, information for probationers and intervention, but I don't hear anything about a committee for a petitioner for reinstatement.
I can take a shot at that. This is Reza. I'm the board's legal counsel. So you say reinstatement, so I presume that means a situation in which somebody has either surrendered their license
Yes.
or it was revoked by the board.
Yes.
The short answer is no. There's not a committee for reinstatement. There is a process to seek reinstatement, and those petitions for reinstatement go through the the process for adjudicating those and do get in front of the full board ultimately. So it's not a committee of the board. It's not some separate committees like in our intervention program. We have the IECs. I'm not sure if this would be helpful or not, but to at least kind of some information out there about the reinstatement process. I'm trying to pull up the Business and Professions Code section that speaks to reinstatement for us. The main section that applies to reinstatement for somebody who's surrendered or been revoked is Business Professions Code section 2760.1. And that starts out by saying an RN whose license has been revoked or suspended or may petition the board for reinstatement. I'm not reading it verbatim because part of it applies to probationers, but that code section is what outlines the process. So you would submit a petition, you'd outline, your reasons for feeling that you've been, rehabilitated or having addressed whatever the issue was, and then that gets routed through to the board itself. It's not like an ongoing type of process like with our intervention evaluation committees where the participant in the intervention program is kind of ongoing through that process and has that committee that they go and see. So it's different, but there is a process, and I'm sure that if you were to go on the board's website and just search for reinstatement, the petition document and additional information is all right there. And if it's not, if you're unable to quickly find it, you can always reach out and we'll point you in the right direction. Hopefully, does that help?
Thank you.
I guess the short answer is no, there's not a committee there.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Committee Chair Nguyen, there are no other public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in our location in Sacramento. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please, and thank you very much. So, committee members, this was an information only, but if you have any kind of final comments or questions, we could entertain them now. Okay, well, thanks again, Lori, for this presentation, and thanks for the hard work of both of you and staff. We're going to close out item number 7 and move to item number 8, which is our last item, and it's the discussion and possible action regarding the policy on internet discipline document retention. And Shannon is going to present on this. Thanks, Shannon.
Yes, me again. Shannon Johnson, the board's Enforcement Division Chief. This is agenda item 8.0. It's regarding the policy on the internet discipline document retention for discipline decisions being posted on the board's website. I wasn't at the last meeting, but from what I understand, there was some public comment based around disciplinary documents remaining on the website. And so we put together some information and provided you with the policy on internet discipline document retention. This document and this policy was created about 14 years ago. And basically, once it became effective, based on this time frame, that's when documents were retained on the internet. After this year, so for instance, probation. Once probation becomes effective, that final date of completion, it remains on the web for 10 years. And then once that 10 years comes up, the document comes off. However, it will always say previous discipline. As far as, say, for instance, National Council nurses, that document remains on their website. So it's only our website that the documents come down. We don't post citations. It's only the reprovals, probation, and then of course, finally, all the final outcomes, whether it be revocation, surrender, etc. We also do post the PC 23s, so our Penal Code 23s conditional license from the criminal courts. We also post the interim suspension orders from the administrative court.
Thank you, Shannon. I remember the public comment that, spurred this, adding this agenda item. It was someone who had gotten, an offense when she was, 18 or 19. And it was completely unrelated. She wasn't a nurse at that point. She was a teenager. When she went to, become a nurse, she had this offense. And, it's still on her record. It does seem unfair. I mean, it's hard to imagine another profession where a professional license, would forever, denote some offense that occurred, could be 30, 40 years ago. It just seems kind of fundamentally unfair. And this is, an older policy. And I'm just wondering if maybe it's a time to, I understand if it's an offense related to nursing, where you have done something really awful on the job, but, getting in an altercation, when you were out, at a party and it's a shoving and then you have an assault on your record, it just seems like we should be able to be a little smarter about it. And I'd love to hear, what the other committee members think, and if we
I would
can
like
kind
to
of come
state,
up. Yeah, go
I would
ahead,
like
Shannon.
to say too, Tricia, I believe it was someone from some years ago on their application disclosed, and I think that's what you're mentioning. Assembly Bill 2138 kind of changed that for us some years ago. So now we are not taking into account some of the criminal activity that we used to. We don't take the convictions, the same types of convictions. It would have to be something very egregious in order to deny a license now based on AB 2138. So that
And
has
she
changed
said-
quite a bit. However, the retention policy never changed.
He said that because her offense had occurred before that bill went into existence, she wasn't covered by it, where she would have been covered by it if it
Yeah,
had occurred.
possibly had she applied after 2138 went into effect, we may not have denied her licensure in the beginning, which means that, the whole disciplinary action wouldn't have occurred. However, everybody that happened to before still falls under the same retention policy because we took action. And so that action is what is being held to the retention policy, not the person. And so when we look at the action is how they're retained and provided. And I do also want to say, even if the document is not posted, they are still privy to Public Records Act.
Yeah, it just seems unfair to me. I mean, I just feel like sometimes the way the regulations and the laws affect nurses, it's just much harsher than it is on other professional licensees.
Yeah, and again, this retention policy is 14 years old. Things change. This has not changed. So
Yeah. What are the other committee members? Any comments or questions? And we'll go to public comment. And Lori, of course, you're always welcome to give us
you.
your perspective.
understanding that the retention policy is up there is law, right? It says Business Professions Code, section 2708. And so that retention policy is kind of based on that section. If you can see that in our,
No, Lori, I'm going to
materials.
walk that back. It's citing our general statute.
Oh, it is.
This
Okay.
document itself, I wouldn't quite
It's
call it
something
law.
that we can update.
The board wanted to make changes. I think there's the possibility of that, but you might pursue doing that via law, via
Regulations.
rulemaking.
Thank you. I was getting there. I just started the wrong way. Thank you, Reza, for catching that.
Go ahead. I had a couple of
So-
things. I'll
so-
wait. Go ahead.
So whenever the board is looking at changing something, we have to look at law. And so I started that wrong, but let me kind of end on that. So if we want to have something much more specific, we have to have the statutory language to bridge that from, and then we can do regulations that can update any kind of policy and procedure that we might be able to have. So that's something that we could consider. But what I need you guys to also consider when looking at this is we can only affect California state law. And the other items that are under resources here that talk about the U.S. Department of Health and Services National Practitioner Data Bank that's underneath the Social Security Act, that's not our law to amend. That is a national law. We are required to report that, and they keep that information indefinitely. Our contract with National Council of State Boards of Nursing, we use nurses, and all of our information is transferred to nurses, and they are the person through a contract that report to the National Practitioner Data Bank. So even with AB 2138 that Shannon was referencing, even with us having a retention policy that says from 3 years of completion, we can remove the final decision resulting in a public reprimand, 10 years from completion, we can remove the final decision resulting in probation, the final decision of probation that's told, and any other final decision. Per our retention policy, we can do that. It comes off our website. It doesn't come off Nurses. It doesn't come off the National Practitioner Data Bank. And so in public comment, they were saying when their employer still pulls Nurses data, it shows that they have disciplined. And I don't know how that would be addressed by us trying to address in regulation or us trying to address with California law, because that is a law that is outside of us to amend or challenge. Reza, did you have more?
I had I guess, couple of quick points on this. I think, for one thing, I mean, it's already been said, all of our discipline documents under the Public Records Act, which is not our law, not DCA law, it applies to all state agencies. It says all of our records are public. So if anyone were to ask, these records are public. So obviously there's a difference between it being posted on your individual profile on the DCA website versus, somebody having to make a request to receive the record. At the end of the day, the documents are all public records. An additional point Lori just mentioned, but I want to emphasize, the reporting to the National Practitioner Data Bank is under federal regulation. We don't have discretion there. We don't have wiggle room. It's written out in federal law that we just simply have to follow. And somebody could search the Nurses website probably just as easily, maybe more easily than they could search the DCA website to obtain information about somebody. And that's, as Lori just said, it's outside of our hands. We have to report it if we want to maintain compliance with federal law. The policy, we do have control over our policy. A couple other things I want to mention. The BRN, as I'm sure you know, is not unique in posting discipline documents. All of the boards in the department do it. In fact, we're one of the few that's not listed in the statute that says the boards must post this and this and this and that information regarding its licensees on the website. That's Business Professions Code 27, which lists a number of boards. I don't know why BRN's not in it, but we generally follow the same protocol with regard to disclosure. As far as you know, one of the, I would freely acknowledge that there are situations where, you know, it does kind of seem unfair that something so old and maybe very tangentially, you know, on the, maybe it wasn't practice related. I can acknowledge that there are situations that seem to crop up that are unfair. I will say as an aside that the time to really kind of focus in on whether discipline was right or wrong in that case was not on the document retention side. I'd focus more on the, you know, front side of it where discipline's being imposed in the first place. But once discipline is ordered, the records are public, and the board has obviously an obligation to prosecute the cases. Once a case is prosecuted, the records are public. Now it's a question of disclosure and how long and how do we disclose. So in disclosing, the board is not trying to paint anyone with a scarlet letter. We're not trying to keep anyone out of the profession. We're trying to put information in the hands of the public who utilize these services to then themselves make appropriate decisions for themselves. We don't control employers. And I again, I'll be the first to admit that I see how, you know, having that notation on your profile might lead to, you know, quick rejection in some cases, but the board is not out there, you know, branding people unfairly or anything like that, or you know, holding this over them indefinitely out of just some malice or spite or anything. As I said, I think the main point I'm trying to convey is that we put the information out there for the public to do with it what they feel is appropriate. If an employer thinks, I don't want anyone in my employ that, you know, has a mark against them, that's kind of up to them. And frankly, you know, you might think that's an unfair position to take, but they're the employer, they're the ones that are making the decision, and I don't think it's, you know, they might also have something to say about this, that it's not quite fair that we deny them that information and don't make it readily available to them. And if you were to do that, you know, you could maybe tweak this document here or come up with some kind of broad principles to be able to apply, but you've got to be careful against getting into the weeds on how are we going to, how granular are we going to divide up how we handle document retention online.
So I appreciate, you know, I do definitely appreciate what you're saying, Reza. I do, and Lori too. 100 years ago, when I was a young lawyer working for the legislature, and one of my areas of expertise was DUI. And, you know, after a certain number of years, your old DUIs just fall off your record. And, you know, so that's what's happening in the criminal justice system. And yet here, you have a DUI as an 18-year-old. And when you're
But you don't have
60,
people looking up, you know, the DUI record to see, is this a safe driver? Should I share the road with them? Presumably, I mean, I get it, but I'm drawing a slight distinction that when somebody looks up someone's nursing license, it's either, do I want to hire this person, or do I want to, you know, do I have concerns about this person treating me or my family? And
but a
that's,
40-year-old offense just seems like a hard
I
thing.
agree.
Yeah, okay, that's
So
my
what
point.
we
I'm
hope,
not going to
as I said,
belabor it. I understand federal law. I understand what you've been telling me. It's just one of those kind of fundamental unfairness that kind of sticks in my craw.
I'll just finish my point by saying we're not trying to brand people as, you know, untouchables or something like that. We would hope that those who, you know, the employers or whoever is looking up these people's discipline history might give them some grace and maybe not, you know, necessarily judge every book by its cover, or, you know, we're not telling those out there that, like, these are the untouchables. It's, here's the information, do with it what you will. And what you're finding is that some people actually care enough to, you know, that it's an issue. But I will say that I would hope that there are, you know, folks out there looking at this information who would still give individuals who had some run-in with the board grace and give them an opportunity to show you more of themselves and all of that. That's all I'm going to say.
I have a question, Reza and Trisha, real quick. So
Yeah.
Trisha, you specifically brought up DUI, and our law says substantially related to the practice of nursing. Reza, could we potentially in a future regulation define substantially related to the practice of nursing and exclude like a first time DUI that was at 0.08 with no mitigating factors, like you didn't have people in the car, you didn't have children in there, you didn't cause an accident? Is there a way that we could potentially address Trisha's concern with specifically like a 40-year-old DUI or something like that when we look at our law to do that? And would that be the regulatory process, or would we have to seek guidance through like the statutory process or some other realm to maybe narrow that down, or maybe put in through regulations a policy that says DUI with this equals a cite and fine, DUI with this equals, you know, whatever, so that at least we have a starting point for issues that are outside of patient care that are substantially related to the practice of nursing?
A couple things on that. One, there's two different elements there. You're talking about the substantial relationship requirement, which is a requirement to bring discipline in the first place. And we have a regulation, section 1444, titled substantial relationship criteria that talks about, so we have in regs some guidance about substantial relationship. And in short, you could amend that to talk about, you know, one DUI, not on the way to work, whatever you want to say, is not substantially related. Now, there is case law that says alcohol related stuff is substantially related. It meets that requirement, even if it wasn't at the job site or something like that. But you could amend your regulation, or, you know, do some regulations to refine what you consider to be substantially related, and certainly room for that. You could also go and, you know, I've seen other boards that have regulations, just because we're talking about DUIs here, that say this type of infraction involving alcohol, like a first-time DUI, is not considered, quote, a substance abusing licensee, and that removes them from the standard. Because once you have somebody who's a quote a quote substance abusing licensee, then the uniform standards are triggered and you have to follow that. So there's some room, but again, that is all at the front end of, you know, whether to impose discipline at all. On the back end of, you know, once you've got discipline, I think you could still look at ways to tweak our retention policy more granularly to say, if it's a non-practice related first-time alcohol offense, for just an example, that our retention policy online is this. So with the document that we had in our materials that's 14 years old, that can be tweaked. I mean, currently, it's only kind of broken down based on kind of at a high level what the outcome was, whether it was a cite and fine or a public reprimand or probation or revocation or other. If you want to break it down more detailed and say practice related cases get held on the website this long, or, you know, first cases drop off after this long, I don't see a reason you couldn't necessarily do that. And I'm speaking off the cuff here, so take it with a grain of salt, please. But
Hearing is if maybe we should take some time, maybe re-agendize this item and take some time and really look at our 14-year-old policy and bring this back to committee, where, I mean, I will admit, I did not spend enough time with that document to really be able to have an important conversation about that. Board Member Cormack and then Board Member Lawler.
Thank you, Chair Wynn. So I just want to up-level us here for a minute and not spend all of all of our time on what it sounds like it might be an edge case, and I understand that that's important to that person and we should think about it. But in general, if I look at this, and thank you very much for sharing it in advance, it was helpful to review. It makes total sense that if someone's unlicensed, that we're going to leave that up forever because we want to know that. I don't know actually how you look them up if they're unlicensed. I guess you have to know their name and not their number because they don't have one. And revocation or surrender, that makes total sense that it should be indefinite. So you talked about citation and fine. Is there a document posted with the citation or no? No, okay. So that might solve going forward the edge case that we currently have looking backward. If we
Only caveat there is if
changed
you,
it.
oh, I'm sorry, never mind, take it back.
Yeah, if we changed it, right? I think the public reprimand, 3 years, that makes sense based on, what we're giving public reprimands for. And then I guess one where we could spend some time is 10 years about right for probation, told probation, and other. And I guess what's interesting there is to think about the number of times we have someone who goes back on probation and has had a prior probation. And I feel like 10 years may sound like a long time, but if our objective, which it is to protect the public, there are more than, it is not unusual to have someone who's already been on probation again. So I am not hearing a way to solve the edge case for this particular person because that document's already on nurses, right? It's already in the federal system.
Yes. Yeah, once
Okay.
the final
Nurses, it's already
disposition occurs, they post it to nurses.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, I listening carefully to this now, I think this is the third time we've talked about it. I'm not aware of a way for us to solve that individual problem. I guess if we were up leveling it just one more time again, in general, the probation process is effective at getting people to work with supervision, and usually they are able to work thereafter, right? I mean, that's part of the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, can I just state too, that any case that is going to have disciplinary action, those go before the board to review and vote on. So if you feel that somebody is receiving a punitive discipline and where maybe it shouldn't happen, that's when, we take them to closed session, have discussions, and they're rejected or, sent back for whatever reason. So every case that ends up with disciplinary action is going to come before the board.
Right.
Excuse me, Shannon, thank you for that. But the case that we keep hearing about where she had an offense as a teenager, she
Okay.
wasn't a nurse. She got into trouble when she applied for a license. And then it was imposed. And now it's 40 years later.
And
And
I just want to say too, I'm not saying anything about, what the public comment was, but I just want to remind the committee that sometimes you may not get all the facts of the actual
that's true.
case. When, some things may be left out that were pertinent. So just maybe keep that in mind.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
And
So
just to
just
add, I
wrap-
did start
Yes.
sharing, sorry, I did start sharing my screen really quick just because I wanted to kind of remind everybody that what we can do within our retention policy does not affect this website right here. And this website right here, many of the employers use what's called e-Notify, and each one of their employees is enrolled in e-Notify. And so if there is any discipline imposed by any state for any reason, it's an email sent to that employer right when it occurs. And that employer knows about it immediately. The other thing is a section on here called Quick Confirm. And Quick Confirm is what a lot of employers will look at prior to hiring the person. And so they rarely go to our website now that this is something that is available and easy for them. And a lot of times with the e-notify, it's something they subscribe to, right? And so if they're doing e-notify, they will also do quick confirm to check. And if they do and plan to hire, they add that nurse's license to the e-notify process so that they get all the feedback on that. And that is a process that's done outside of what we have control over with any of our retention policies. And so that information, once discipline is done, and that's what Reza was talking about, is kind of out of our hands on how the nation utilizes that data when considering licensure in another state, when considering multi-state licensures, if they're part of a compact, if they're considering employment and stuff, that it's beyond. So to address this at the get-go is really kind of where that needs to be addressed, and whether or not that's discipline. And one of the things, just to kind of remind you guys, if we look at the statistics, and I know that Shannon typically has these readily available, it might not be part of our data here, but I know on our annual report, we report out how many licenses were denied. And on a regular basis, it's 0 or 2 or 5 on application. It has to be egregious in order for us to deny a license. That denial of the license, even at that point, can be appealed by the person. They go through an appeal process. If they don't appeal, it becomes it stays. If they do appeal, then it goes through the process to appeal and get that revoked. But of the 40 to 60,000 license applications that we receive on an annual basis, and I did a broad kind of sweeping thing because there was big changes after COVID, right? We're only revoking less than a handful. Or denying less than a handful. And so for that denial, which does become discipline, that goes to nurses, that goes to the National Practitioner Data Bank, something had to occur that was pretty egregious for that, or else that would not have been there. So just to really put that out there, the board does not make a habit of denying licensure that results in discipline. We may deny licensure because they don't meet the qualifications under education. That's a much more common occurrence. That is not discipline. That says we're allowing you guys to clear up those deficiencies and you can still get licensed. But an actual denial that becomes disciplinary is based on some clear and convincing evidence.
Okay.
So can I just sum up from that? Would that
Yes,
be
and then
okay?
David, you had a question or comment. Thank you, Allison. Go ahead.
So I think if we wanted to continue down this path, there are 2 avenues that I would be interested in. One would be, is the 10-year number the right number? Is it 7? Is it 12? You know, and I don't know how to decide that. But that's the one that seems long. And then the second would be that's on the vertical axis of this document retention policy. And then the second would be on a horizontal axis, which was sort of what Mr. Pejuhesh was beginning to discuss, which is there another category of something that is a minor version of an offense that would have less of a long-term impact? And I guess, you know, really was Ms. Melby who was saying, like, is there a DUI that is a citation, which then would not have a document, so people would not know what it was. Do you already do citations for some DUIs, Ms. Johnson?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so we just don't see them, right? So staff is
And so,
already
no,
saying, yeah.
Citations are not posted. They're non-published public documents. And so we do put an alert on nurses, a flag, so they know that there's something. They would have to contact us in order to request it for nurses. And then it is purged 3 years from the resolution of that citation. So if there's something attached to it, like a fine amount, once that fine amount is paid in full, 3 years from that date, it is purged.
Right, and so no one would know that it was a DUI.
Correct.
Um,
We would have no,
and
we couldn't even provide it in public record at that point.
And it's minor enough that staff is confident it doesn't need to be sent to the board for either public reprimand or probation.
Well, there is a caveat to that because on a citation, they have two options. They have an option for an informal conference, which is just with the board staff. If they don't like that outcome, they also have an opportunity to petition for a formal conference. And a formal conference entails us to transmit that to the Attorney General's office to represent us at a hearing at that point. Once they make that request, then that citation then becomes a public record and is going to follow the same standard as the others.
Okay, but if someone had, and again, I understand a DUI is not a DUI is not a DUI, but if there was a very straightforward, simple one as described earlier, 0.08, no injuries, no other concerning things, staff might choose to do a citation. It would be done informally. There would be no document. Nothing would go to nurses.
Correct.
No document.
We would
Okay.
post it as an action or like a flag, and it would
Right,
say
something
contact the board for further information. That's what they get.
Okay. I am comfortable with then the status quo in terms of how that's working. Because based on, what we see, there are, other considerations that make things more complicated and, deserving of additional discipline. So again, for me to sum up, I think it's just, is the 10 years the right thing? And again, is there something that someone else is doing either in California or elsewhere that is different we should contemplate? But I don't think that the document retention policy is going to solve the problem for this particular person. And I am sorry about that, but again, the intent for us is to protect the public, and the vast majority of nurses who go through probation are, employed thereafter.
Mr. Lawler?
I don't think there's anything you can, I don't know what there is you can do with this policy because we have, and I don't even know what they are, but we have, like you were saying, laws, both state and federal, limiting us from doing much different. The information's already out there in other databases, which sounds like they're easier to find anyways than through our website. The only thing that I would be willing to consider a further conversation at another committee meeting or with the full board, because I'd love to hear from our nurses as well on the committee, is the idea of this one line where we have unlicensed members. Maybe that's the one we could play with, because like Trish said, in the criminal world or the private world, there are statute of limitations. I mean, if I'm 23 and I get a DUI or write bad checks or beat my kids and get arrested, here I am 35 years later, that's not on my record anymore. But as a nurse, it would still be in at least our California BRN website. So I don't know. I'd love to have a further conversation with the rest of the board if there's anything to do to change it. But like Allison said, it doesn't seem like there's really much we can do. So I don't have a great contribution. I just wanted to make that comment.
I'm coming around to that too, but I'd love to hear a public comment at this point. So if the board moderator would please open up public comment for us, that'd be great.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing in the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, I would like to make a comment. Nevertheless, she will persist. Would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
I appreciate this discussion very much. I do think we could have more discussion because, yes, I think we could amend this document. I don't know that it would make a lot of difference because of, as far as advanced practice nursing, the national provider database makes a big difference, because unless you if you change a document that the Board of Nursing were to change, that would change anything with the National Provider Data Bank. But I think the National Provider Data Bank is something that has changed a lot for advanced practice nurses in the last, at least since I graduated, in the last 15 years. And I think there's a lot of education that advanced practice nurses should do for each other. And that we as a board, there's a lot of discussion. And I think that the fact that if you have any discipline and you are not able to retake, if you're able to get your license back and you're not able to get your certification back, then you can never do what you did again. And if your certification exam is no longer in practice, and I'm sorry, I'm ill, so I should not be a nurse right now, but my advanced practice exam is no longer in circulation. So even if I can recover, I can't do what I did again because it's not in circulation. So I could never get off probation and I can't retire. And so all my naughty documents will always be out there. And I can't look at these things, and it's just, you can't work in healthcare again. All these National Provider Data Bank documents are everywhere. And so, sure, I just think if someone's looking at you, nobody should look at the BRN document website and see things about your things in your past forever. But the president is a criminal, a very big criminal. Thank you for listening. This is just very hard. Very hard.
Thank you for your comment. Committee Chair Nguyen, there are no other public requests or comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in our Sacramento location. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Well, thank you very much. I think this was a really important conversation to have. I am persuaded that there's not an awful lot that we can do on this, but I'm still glad that we took the time, to explore it. And, of course, if staff has ideas moving forward, that would be, welcome to me. And I do appreciate my committee members, kind of helping think this through.
Do you
Any
have any
other
direction?
Go ahead.
Yeah, do you have any direction on how you would like this to show up at the board meeting, or do you want this just to stay at committee and not have this on the board meeting for discussion? What are your thoughts with that?
I think we could do a report out that we explored. We had a good conversation. We heard public comment, but that our hands really are somewhat tied by what's going on in nurses. And by
Perfect, thank you. So we'll keep this on the agenda for the board meeting and we'll have you guys do a report out on it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lori. Yeah. Well, believe it or not, that was our last item and we have not taken any action, so we do not need a motion. So unless staff has anything else, I'm ready to go to item 10, which is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are adjourned
Great.
at 4 p.m. exactly. Thank you,
Good.
guys.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Have a
Bye.
good rest of the day.
Hey, thank you all. See
Thank
you next
you.
month.
Okay.